to Freshly Forever, a podcast that gives you fascinating insights week after week. Here's your host, Vi Kumar.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode on podcast Freshly Forever. Today I have here with us Stephanie Espy. She is empowering the next generation of STEM leaders by imparting STEM fluency. She offers this to students and is forging a society in which every child is motivated to create and realize his or her fullest potential. Stephanie is a chemical engineer from MIT with also a theater arts background. And it's with so much joy that I welcome her here to podcast Freshly Forever. She is the founder of Math SP, a very renowned program here in the South and offering it to, I guess, globally everyone now. Hey, Stephanie, welcome to podcast Freshly Forever. How are you today?
Hi, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I guess you have had a long journey doing so much of wonderful stuff in STEM. So, when did you first realize that math and science are not just these forms of study and is sort of very much part of our lives? It's like omnipresent.
Yeah, I was probably in my early teenage years when I realized that math and science is all around us. And I think that was both because of my parents as well as my teachers. My parents were very good at including me and my siblings into things that they needed to be done around the house or outside in the yard. And one of those things was fixing the car. If there was ever an issue with one of my parents' cars, it was, my dad was the one that was really equipped to get under the hood and figure out what was going wrong. But he also made sure that I and my siblings were a part of that. And so we had a chance to understand cars and how they work and, problem solving, figuring out what the issues are and how do we fix those issues. And so that was an early, sort of case of like, this is physics. Physics is a class, of course, one of our core classes in the study in the classroom, but it's also driving cars, fixing cars. That's physics. And so I didn't know at the time that I was learning about the principles of physics, but that's essentially what I was doing when I was trying to help him to uncover, the challenges with the car. And then that applies also to fixing anything around the house that needs to be fixed. You could look it up and figure it out, take it apart, put it back together. That was a part of my normal upbringing. And then, when I first took chemistry in I think it was 10th grade, I learned a lot about science, of course, and a lot of the textbook knowledge, but also the experimentations that we did helped me to connect chemistry to, again, the real world. And so it was really both a combination of my parents and what I learned in school. So I think it was in 8th, 9th, 10th grade, like that time frame is when I really saw applications of math and science to things I was doing at home, things around me.
How nice, how nice. Not everyone gets that chance to be part of, hands-on activities. And I'm glad you, for one, got your parents got you oriented when you were very young. But how do you think children as such perceive STEM to be, Stephanie? I think some of them tend to be very scared hearing that term, right? Oh, science, that's just ginormous. They think it's just so puzzling when they seem to, even associate the term STEM in their school curriculum.
And that's why I think it's really important to have those applications, because if you're just memorizing equations and you're just cramming for a test or a quiz and you cannot see how what you're studying applies to the real world, then your perception of STEM is, I think, not very positive. You may not understand why you're learning the things you're learning. You don't know when you'll ever use the things you're learning. I hear kids a lot say, why do I care about this? Why do I need to know this? And so if they don't have an application to something real world, then that's their mindset. And so STEM applications are hugely important for kids, especially to be able to understand why they're learning the things they're learning. So that whole mode of, project-based learning and learning about like when you can connect different classes together and study an issue from different perspectives, then you're able to see how the importance of STEM, and you're able to appreciate it more because you realize that everything around you, everything around us is STEM. It's created by a process. It's created by a person. You know, it's been created. There is a creator of the things that we use every day. Someone had to put it together. Someone had to think of it and model it and create it and distribute it and manufacture it. If you start thinking about the world in that way, then you start realizing the importance of STEM, how we depend on it for our day-to-day, literally minute by minute, lives.
Very well said. So how do you think this project-based learning can be incorporated in curriculums, even in schools, right? I know you do a lot of it in Math SP, which we'll come to because I just want to devote a good chunk of time to what you do and how you do things there. But when it comes to the school curriculum, just like you pointed out there, it need not be just cramming some equations and memorizing and just going and taking exams, right? So how do you think educators and even students can take advantage of their education system currently and turn the science, technology, engineering, and math into more of an application-based learning process?
Well, fortunately, project-based learning is becoming more and more common in the different schools. That's definitely the way we want to go, where you are taking something that's real world, something that's happening currently, something that the kids care about, and you're figuring out how you can apply math and science to that real world problem. So I think it's becoming more and more common. I know that, for example, in my daughter's school, she works on lots of different projects, and they do a great job of incorporating project-based learning into the things that they're studying and the things that they're learning. So I think it's something that, more and more we're seeing happen mainstream. But, I like the idea of surveying kids, okay, what do you guys care about? What problem in the world would you want to see, would you want to help solve? What bothers you? What keeps you up at night? What keeps your parents up at night? And then just have them throw ideas, whether it be homelessness or poverty or climate change or whatever it is they care about. It could be something global or something more local, more community-based. So then once you have a chance to survey the students in your classroom and understand what they care about, what their concerns are, then that's, the topic of a project that you can use to incorporate different modes of learning and around that project. So that becomes a central theme that all the learning revolves around. So I think that, again, that's a very, more and more common practice in schools and becoming more mainstream. And getting the student input is particularly important, I think, for them to really latch on to it. That's not always the case because teachers, plan ahead and they have things in mind that match up to the curriculum, match up to the standards. But whenever possible, to give students either options or to let them choose, that's just a great way to get them really engaged in learning and also connect what they're learning to something that they care about.
Wonderful. Yeah, right there you brought out several things, right? Homelessness, poverty, climate crisis, so much. And I think even this whole climate crisis, it's like a bigger piece of a puzzle, which has so many other components around it, like gender inequality, poverty, everything, because lack of education is contributing to that in some way as well, because there aren't others that can contribute. When there's like 100 that can contribute, there's probably only like 60 or 70 that are able to, because the other 30 live in a portion of the society that doesn't have like that much of education, right? So there's so much pieces to that bigger puzzle, and you rightly brought it out there. What about gender inequality when it comes to STEM? I know you have focused a lot on empowering girls and women in STEM. And of course, we are going to talk about your book as well. What is it that you're seeing, Stephanie, even today, when it comes to gender inequality in STEM? And how better can we address that?
Well, it's interesting that we're having this conversation today, because today is actually a very special national day. It's called Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day. And
Oh, how nice.
this entire week is Engineers Week. And today in particular is Introduce a Girl to Engineering. And so I was looking up the stats just last night because I wanted to share them today on my social media. And the most recent stat is that 16% of engineers in the workplace are women. 16% are women, and under 6% are women of color. So there is a definite inequality, gender gap in engineering and in STEM in general, especially for women of color. And so that is really why I do what I do, because I am one of those 16%. And I am one of the 6%, under 6% women of color. And so it's critically important that we set up initiatives early on to get girls interested in math and science and STEM, particularly those careers that are changing the world and those careers that are just underrepresented by women and people of color. So I think there's a huge opportunity, and that's why a day like today exists, to bring a national awareness to the underrepresentation of women in STEM, the gender inequality of women in STEM. These days are set up to really shine the light and increase the visibility on the challenges and the issues. But yeah, the numbers are not where we want them to be. And so there is work to be done on all levels to help close the gap, to help bring more girls and women into STEM careers.
So, what then is the key to igniting curiosity and passion in this world that we live in? And how better can we tap student potential? What is it that you go after? Say, if we want to see few years down the line that 16% becoming at least 40%, where there's that much involvement of women in STEM, how better can we tap into student potential and get them going in the right direction?
Well, it's just starting early with repeated exposure and repeated experiences. Everyone has potential. It's just you have to nurture that potential, and you cannot dismiss someone when they don't have, even an early interest. Sometimes the interest develops later on. Sometimes the interest develops with a different conversation or a different opportunity. So the more opportunities, the more touch points you have with students and girls early on, and often the more interest develops, and that develops over time in some cases. Kids are kids, and they don't know what's best for them. And sometimes, it may take many different touch points for it to click or for something to turn on. And you never want to exclude someone because they haven't presented an interest or because they are not making the higher grades, because, you never know when that light bulb may turn on for them and when they will finally recognize a passion or interest that they didn't have before. So continuing to ignite curiosity and continuing to expose girls in particular to a wide range of opportunities in STEM and giving them different project-based learning activities to connect to things that they care about. Those are the ways to really change these numbers and to help them to understand how STEM careers really do impact the world.
And you said it very nicely again. You said not to exclude anyone based on grades and stuff like that. So how then do you empower that population, those kind of student groups that are perhaps not showing that much inclination initially and who probably could use like a good boost of confidence, right? Hey, after all, this is not something that you want to tread away from, but you still can explore. It can be fun. And then finally you can decide whether this is indeed the route you want to pursue.
Well, it kind of goes back to what I just said. You have to connect to something they care about. If you're putting something in front of them they have no interest in, then they're not going to connect with it. You have to find out what their interests are. You have to ask them questions to gauge what they care about, what issues they're concerned with, and connect it to that. And so you have to have a student central approach where you're focusing on that particular student or a group of students, and you're designing your lessons around what they have identified as something they care about. So a student-centered approach is the way to get them excited and interested in something that you want to expose them to. So that's the way to go. And again, to try different things. It's not a one size fits all. You can't put something in front of a group of students and expect for everybody to resonate. That's not the way people are. Everybody is multidimensional. So you have to figure out how to reach a student based on who they uniquely are.
Again, leads me to this next question, but you brought out there very nicely how a one size doesn't fit all. So it's a lot of research and understanding on the part of both the educator. And when it comes to students also with STEM, there is a lot of research involved, right? And you have done a great bit of research and several publications to your credit. Why don't you talk about the role of research that's so significant when it comes to STEM?
Well, research is great because it allows you to study something that hasn't been studied, right? And for a lot of scientists in particular, it's really encouraging to do something that's completely original and novel and contribute to the world in that way. So a lot of research scientists are really figuring things out, things that are based on a question, based on a hypothesis, and then you spend the time researching and experimenting in order to come up with an answer to the questions. Research has been one of the things I've enjoyed the most, in my career. It's been one of the most challenging and stressful, but but it's also been the most rewarding, especially when you're able to figure something out in the end and all the hard work and effort pays off. And then you're able to publish. You talked about publications, and publishing is really sharing your research with the general population so that they can now understand something that was initially not understood very well. And so research and publishing that research is really the goal of being a scientist.
Yeah. And then you finding Math SP, your signature program. What is your goal, Stephanie? What are you trying to accomplish via Math SP?
Well, Math SP started over a decade ago because I wanted to increase the number of girls and students of color that were going into STEM careers. And it was my belief that one of the hurdles of choosing a STEM career is not having a strong foundation in math and science. So Math SP is an organization I founded in 2009 in order to strengthen the foundation of math and science amongst students in middle and high school in particular, because they're not going to decide to pursue a STEM career if their foundation in math and science is not strong. They're not going to have the confidence to pursue a career in STEM if their foundation in math and science is not strong. So if I could strengthen that foundation and help them to see that STEM is all around us, like we've talked about earlier, help them to connect STEM to something they care about, then perhaps they may see the potential of a STEM career and become interested. So that is really the bigger strategy or goal of creating Math SP was to help bring more women or girls and people of color in particular into the STEM pipeline by increasing their foundation in math and science and the subjects that really matter the most. You can't go into a data science career or an actuary career without having a solid foundation in math. You won't feel confident going into those careers if your math foundation is not strong. So if I can help you strengthen that foundation, you may decide, becoming an actuary or a data scientist or a statistician is a career for you, but not until you feel solid in your math foundation. And so you understand that you have the skills and what it takes to pursue one of those areas. Same thing with engineering or science or any of the STEM areas is that if you don't have that solid foundation, then you remove that career from the table. It's not even an option. So that's really the purpose of Math SP is it's all about the foundation that is established in K through 12 education and making sure students have a very solid, firm foundation and have the confidence that they need to pursue a STEM career.
Wonderful. You said 16% women in technology, right? And then 6% as people of color. And with Math SP having been around for a decade now, where were the numbers when you first started, Stephanie? And what kind of a trend are we seeing over the past decade?
And those are the numbers for engineering in particular. So not all of STEM. I researched numbers for women in engineering in the workplace. So when you look at the number of women earning degrees in engineering, it's a higher number. It's about quarter, 23-24%. But one of the challenges is that a lot of those women leave engineering. The number in the workplace is lower than the number of those with degrees. Similarly, for women in STEM in general, the number is about a quarter. And that has really remained, as far as I can tell, and what I know, remained consistent throughout the years. The number of women of color has remained between 3 to 5%. I mean, it depends on what category of women you're looking at, because women of color is a broad. So where you're zooming in on African American women or Hispanic or whatever it is, you have to look a little bit more deeply into those buckets to see those numbers. But anything that's single digit, that's under 10%, to me, even if I like to see the line trending up, but it's still single digit is just not acceptable. Having women leave the workplace after they've, gotten so far in terms of studying and getting a degree and then leaving is also unacceptable. So we want to get more women, young women and girls, to choose STEM careers, but we also need to do a lot of work to keep them in those careers once they're there.
Yeah. Definitely, there's still more work to do. That's just very evident from the numbers that you just shared with us here. Back in a moment with our guest on Freshly Forever. What about your SP method? That's a lot of strategy and problem solving, right? How do you teach these young minds the importance of, say, hey, okay, it just involves strategy, and then once you figure out, that's how you go problem solve. So how do you kind of take them through the different steps of phases so they can just kind of get a better understanding of the overall picture, Stephanie?
Well, yeah, helping them understand strategies is critical, because when you're looking at how to tackle a real world problem, or even, simpler, how to tackle a word problem that they're given as a part of an assignment, you have to be able to take that problem and take it apart and understand the pieces of the problem, phrase by phrase, sentence by sentence, make sure you understand all the inputs. What are you getting? What do you know? And then what are you looking for? What do you not know? And then how do you go from what you have, what you're given, to what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to arrive at? And that process of taking what you have, what you know, what you're given, to coming up with a solution is a process, is a strategy to that. But it starts with really being able to identify the problem and making sure you truly understand what it is you're looking for. A lot of times in the classroom, that's not always clear. Students will read something very quickly and then say, I don't get it. I don't understand it. So it's helping them to understand the question, understand the problem statement. That's the first step. What are you trying to figure out? If you can't articulate that, then that's obviously you can't go past that first point without articulating what it is you're trying to figure out. And then what tools do you need to figure it out? There's a lot of tools in the toolbox. You don't need all of them, but you may need 2, 3, or 4 of them. So what are the tools that you are given, and which ones do you need in order to solve a question, solve a problem? So that is part of the strategy as well. And then repetition, problem solving. You get good at math and science by solving problems over and over and over again. Similar problems, right? So it's like, okay, you're studying a certain concept. You're not fully understanding it. You're not grasping it well initially. Well, how do you get better at that? You do more and more problems. You keep practicing the steps, the process, the strategy. And then at some point, it starts to stick. So I think it's also helping students to understand that even though you don't understand it day one or initially, doesn't mean you won't be able to understand it later. It's just you have to do the practice to get there. Can't give up in that process. with a lot of girls, that mindset of, I don't get it, I'm not good enough, I'll never get it, helping them to change that mindset, because that's not the case. It just requires a lot more effort and time to understand fully and to feel confident in your abilities.
Uh-huh. Just a shift in the thought process can really tweak their approach also, right? Where then does the gap lie when it comes to students being great test takers? I often find some of them are like very good in their classroom, very good in what they are supposed to do, right? Just regular scheme of things, regular tests and quizzes and exams when it comes to their curriculum. But then when it comes to like these competitive tests, how come students, some of them that are great students, where lies the gap when it comes to that process, Stephanie? How they tackle, say, like an SAT or a GMAT or GRE?
Well, these types of standardized exams are a huge final exam of what you've learned starting from early childhood, 3, 4, and 5, when you learn how to count and simple addition, subtraction, all the way through high school. And so it's essentially a comprehensive exam of concepts that you learned when you were middle school, elementary school, 8, 9, 10, 11. The things that my daughter is learning in 4th grade are things that she's going to need on these competitive exams when she is 15 and 16. So if she's not understanding what she's doing now in 4th grade, then she's going to have challenges when she is taking those tests later on in life. So it's important that as you go through your education, the things that you're learning you truly understand them, because it's all going to come back when it's time to take the SAT, ACT, GMAT, GRE, whatever test you're taking. These things will come back. My daughter's studying fractions now, which is a hard concept for a lot of people. If you didn't understand it when it was introduced, if it wasn't explained in a way that it makes logical sense, then you're going to struggle with fractions when you are taking the SAT. You're going to have to relearn concepts, review concepts. So that's what happens, is that kids who do well in school can still have challenges with these standardized exams because, one, they haven't seen a lot of the content for years, and so they have forgotten a lot of it. And two, it is a mixed bag of things they've learned throughout the years. It is not going to be a test of chapter 5 when they can go home and study chapter 5 and go in school and take a test on chapter 5 and make an A on the test because it was all about chapter 5. These tests are going to be a combination of all the chapters from all the years, and you have to be able to read a question and know what tools to use on that particular question. And that is why it's a challenging test. And that is why doing practice questions and knowing the language of the test and knowing what's on the test and what's not on the test is important. You don't want to go in and take any of these tests without having prepared for it. You want to go in there after taking many practice tests, after knowing what the question types are, how they're structured, what the timing looks like. You prepare for these exams so that you can, do well as you do on a school test. So that's really to become a better test taker is just really knowing the test that you're taking, doing lots of practice questions, making sure you are getting help when you need it, and reviewing concepts that, again, you learned throughout your entire education that maybe you have forgotten, refreshing yourself on some of those concepts.
So how then do you reinforce those? What do you do at Math SP to help them become better test takers? Like your signature method, your approach.
So exactly.
They have clearly forgotten, right? Because they are used to that approach, or just because the concept, how it was introduced to them when they were in 4th grade or 5th grade may not be necessarily in a way that's like a project-based or interesting type of learning, right? So in that case, it may not really sit with them for years down the road. So how do you reinforce those?
Well, it's just what I said. You have to spend the time reviewing concepts that you once knew. So taking that time to refresh and review concepts that are tested that you learned back in 4th, 5th grade is part of becoming a better test taker. You have to take the time to practice consistently on the areas where you have identified as having a weakness, recognizing the concepts that you need practice with and recognizing the types of questions on the test and doing lots of practice problems so that you can strengthen. How do you do well in anything? How do you do well in learning a new instrument? How do you do well in cooking a new recipe? How do you do well with learning a new video game? How do you do well with riding a bicycle, right? Or playing a sport? This is really no different. It requires to understand your mistakes, understand the things that you are lacking in, and it requires a lot of practice in those areas to get better at it. Like I said, it's really no different from anything else you do really well. How did you become so proficient at doing that so well? A lot of practice, a lot of time, a lot of consistency, a lot of effort. You have a coach who can help you correct your form, who can help correct your stance, can help identify where you're going wrong, the types of questions you're missing. So that's sort of the same thing when it comes to taking a standardized exam.
And given that students spend a lot of time in their main form of education, their curriculum, say go to a school, then come to Math SP, however that may be, how then are you able to devote the time to kind of even reinforce these concepts in like any project-based mode of learning? How do you help them get a better understanding and become better test takers?
Help practice, making the time, taking something out of your schedule so that you have more time. You have to use time management skills in order to fit in things that are important. When you're taking a standardized test, you're studying for a very finite amount of time. It's not something you're studying for forever. So in that time frame, you have to remove something that is not as important so that you can make more time for what is important, which is preparing for the test. And then in that time, you are doing the necessary things to improve. Again, just like perfecting a new recipe, you're getting in the kitchen, you're getting your ingredients, you're figuring it out, you're practicing your skills, and to the point where you are where you want it to be. You have reached your target score, and then it becomes almost second nature at some point, right? Then you can make that recipe over and over again, and it's like that initial effort and time it took to perfect it, now it's less and less time required because now you know exactly what you're doing, you know exactly how to do it. Same thing here. The more, it may require a lot of time up front, but the better you get at it, and as you strengthen your skills, it will require less and less time.
And STEM Gems, your book and story of 44 women in science and technology. Why don't you talk about all of that? What made you write it and the whole journey and everything about it, and the impact you had in empowering the younger generation further to that book.
Well, we can talk about that for about an hour or two easily. It's a lot to unpack. But I'll just give a short answer in that STEM Gems is all about helping to close the gender gap. We've been talking a lot already about underrepresentation of women in STEM. And one of the different ways I, try to help bring more girls into STEM outside of creating Math SP is by creating STEM Gems, because another challenge outside of having a solid foundation in math and science is not knowing the opportunities that exist. We've all heard that phrase, you can't be what you can't see. You won't be what you don't see. So for a lot of girls, they can go well into their adulthood before they even know the opportunities. So it's all about making sure they know early the different careers that are available for them and that they have role models in those careers. And so STEM Gems is about giving girls role models and early exposure to STEM careers and to women in STEM, increasing the visibility of women that are currently working in STEM so they are in the limelight, they are highlighted and recognized so that they can serve as role models and mentors to the next generation. So the STEM Gems book shares the stories of 44 phenomenal women in 44 different careers, because it shows the breadth of careers, and it also shows the breadth of women that have pursued these careers. And it really appeals to so many different types of girls, and they can find themselves in these stories, and then they can adopt new role models they didn't even know existed. So it's just giving them a whole new set of women to look up to that are not mainstream. You're not going to turn on your television and or look on the cover of a magazine and see these women, but you will open this book and you'll see them and you'll learn more about them and their work and what they do and how they change the world and their advice. And you'll walk away hopefully inspired and empowered to pursue a STEM career similarly to what I have pursued.
And we already talked about the disparity in percentage of women in STEM in in the workforce and even their path in the education system when it comes to the engineering curriculum and computer science. And or what is something you would tell girls and women as to why not to shy away?
Well, there's studies that show girls care about careers that change the world. Girls want a career that they can make a difference and change the world and make money. So if you want to make a difference in the world, if you want to help people, if you want to make money, then STEM is definitely something you should consider.
And when it comes to the role of STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, in saving our planet and our future, and the potential to, say, get involved in volunteering initiatives or to innovate, what is some advice that you would offer?
So get involved in your school activities, get involved in your community activities, find organizations that you can connect with to introduce you to different opportunities, different ways to learn, find mentors, connect with social media influencers who are sharing their stories and their journey and their work with the next generation. There's lots of ways to get involved. It just sometimes takes a little bit of effort and research. Reading the STEM Gems book is a great first step to understand what the opportunities are. What are some opportunities that you haven't necessarily considered up until this point? There's a lot of guidance and advice that is shared by the 44 different women in the book. Use them and use their advice and their guidance to help you figure out, what your path can look like. And then, like I said, there's plenty of opportunities, whether they're in your school or not in your school. If they're not, they're in your community. And so connecting with your local chamber of commerce or connecting with your local college. Colleges tend to have programming designed for kids. And so connecting with your local colleges to understand what programs they offer. So there's opportunities out there. It just sometimes requires doing some digging to figure out how you can get involved, how you can volunteer, how you can connect with like-minded people, or how you can just try something new, try something different, try something you haven't tried before to figure out if you like it.
Yeah, get inspired, find out what your true passion area is, and then channel your efforts towards that. That just sums it up very nicely. Anything else you want to add about your contact information and your social media channels and anything more about Math SP that you want to share? I think the forum is yours, Stephanie.
Sure. Well, for Math SP, I would say definitely check out the Math SP website. That is a great place to go just to learn more about Math SP and to look at our different services that we have. The website is mathsp.com. You can also find Math SP on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. It's for boys and girls starting in middle school. So starting in middle school for boys and girls. Absolutely. For those who are having a challenge in their math or science class, for those who maybe have missed a lot of school or just learn better, when they have someone that they can ask questions of in a one-on-one setting. Sometimes, there's kids who, when they have, their peers around them, they're not as comfortable speaking up in the classroom. So this is an opportunity to really connect with someone one-on-one. It's for those who want to get ahead. Our students really are wide ranging in terms of the reasons why they sign up with Math SP. Definitely check out the website to learn more about it. To learn more about STEM Gems, you can also visit that website, which is stemgemsbook.com, and also look on the STEM Gems Book Instagram page. And there's also a Twitter and Facebook for STEM Gems as well. So, of course, your social media be a good place to go, as well as the two websites.
Yeah. And use social media to channel your efforts in the right direction. That's again, get inspired, follow the right people, spend your time productively there. And is this just an in-person program, or is it also like virtual that people in other parts of the globe can take advantage of?
Yes, Math SP is both in person and virtual. So if you are not in the Atlanta area where we are based in person, then we can still have opportunity to work with you virtually, no matter where you live. There are virtual opportunities as well as some in-person opportunities depending on where you live.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking the time to talk to us today. And I'm sure many, many girls would realize the power and potential of STEM via your message that you have offered here. And we look forward to connecting with you back again in the future. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
Wonderful. And listeners, as always, follow the podcast, rate the podcast, and leave a review from your podcast app of choice. And until next time, with yet another interesting guest and yet another interesting topic, it's me, Vi, saying so long.